7 o'clock, the meeting will come to order. I'm Grace Lesperance, Cascade Township Supervisor. Clerk Slater, please call the roll.
Trustee Nordhook.
Here.
Trustee Shipley.
Here.
Treasurer Pierce.
Here.
Trustee McDonald.
Here.
Clerk Slater. Here. Supervisor Lesperance.
Here. Trustee Kessel is absent tonight and also excused for tonight's meeting. Please rise if possible for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Approval of agenda.
I'd like to do one addition. Just ask everybody to bear with me a little bit on this, try to bring things together here. I would like to add an agenda item of forensic financial audit. And I will go into explanation when we get to it. I think this can bring us together a little more. So I'd like to add that to the agenda.
Okay.
You want a motion? I'll make a motion.
Where did it go on the agenda?
The last item right now is 073-2021, so it would be 074-2021. Motion to
I think Tim made a motion to approve the agenda with the addition at the end of the forensic financial audit discussion. Second.
It's a motion made by Trustee Nordhook, supported by Trustee McDonald, to approve tonight's agenda with the addition of adding one item, item 074-2021. Motion to approve, call it independent financial forensic audit. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 4, we have no presentations this evening. Article 5, public comments. Anyone wishing to speak, please step up to the podium if possible. Please state your name and address for record keeping. And then once we're finished with in-person public comments, we can move on to any comments that are virtual. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes if possible. Good evening, Mr. Whitley. Please proceed.
Chuck Whitley, 5030 Sequoia Drive. Cascade Township has a river running through it. And a few weeks ago, there was a lot of storms and whatnot. And so on the buoy, a few houses upstream from me, a very large tree, 26 feet long, about 2 feet in diameter, 3,000 pounds of tree, hung up on the chain of the buoy. So I was able to maneuver it around to unhook it from the buoy, kind of parked it alongside my shoreline. The current then kind of tuck it and move it over to my dock. But at least it wasn't there ready to come down and at any moment, take out my dock because it was, just hanging there, stuck on the chains. So the basic problem here is a river runs through the township. And right now I am sort of in possession of a very, very large tree. And so to some regards, it's my problem because I put it there. In other regards, if the current were to shift or if a rope were to be attached to said tree and swung out into the channel, it would immediately become somebody else's problem. I don't think that that's a good thing to have. Last Saturday night, I happened to be looking and a tree of somewhat similar proportions passed through at 1 a.m. in front of my dock. So safety message, everybody, there is big stuff in the river, and the bigger it is, the more of it is under the water. And so be very careful. The other thing is the responsibility and who takes care of this sort of stuff? A similar thing would be if you're on a bayou and you have lots of sediment and you can't get to your dock. Well, tough luck for you, you have that problem. 10 years from now, the township may have a problem because all that sediment shifts down, into the river and, messes with the dam or something. So the problem with weeds, you cut them, they go downstream. The problem with logs, you temporarily have them, but then you don't. There's kind of a community ownership that should be going on here so that it doesn't become isolated, luck of the draw, you got a gift from the river today, and so you have a problem as an individual. We need to work on this together. The SAD, which is not on the agenda for tonight, is one thing that would provide some sort of backstop for being able to do this sort of thing. But, the basic premise is that, people have responsibilities, but it's not just the luck of the draw of people being isolated. It's your problem today. And because it stopped here today, it's your problem forever. We kind of need to work together on this. And so I would just encourage that, any cooperation that can be done to get people to work together on this. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Whitley, we were hoping to have the SAD on tonight's agenda, but we're planning then on the next meeting's agenda that it will be on there. So thanks for your patience.
Good evening, Jeff Dion, 2984 Thornapple River Drive. On the subject of the river, I have had to call Kent County Sheriff's Department, I think 3 times this year for kids swimming in front of the Cascade Dam. We live adjacent to the dam. We have full view of the dam, and the last thing I want my family to witness is a drowning. People are coming in around the fence. They were out fishing the other night around the fence, but mainly they're walking on the dam and jumping in the water. They were swimming directly in front of the gates, the intakes, and you yell at them, they don't really care. So we need to get some signage up there that says no swimming. Also, all the buoys should be marked no swimming. I mean, we've got to do a better job to make the public aware. I know it seems evident. It's just not that obvious, I guess. So if we could do something for that, that would be great. This is the Cascade impound, obviously, above Tassel Park. So that's great. The next subject is on a boat ride the other night. I haven't been on the river much this year because our kids are playing travel baseball, and we've been busy with that. But I finally got on the boat and I drove up, and there's a property located at 6921 Berger Drive Southeast. It has a BDR. I don't know if you want to pull up I got a couple photos I can show you, but it has a BDR and J. Visser sign out in front of it. The reason I mention it is kind of had a flashback to the whole Ron McCullum situation on Thornapple River Drive when Ron purchased property, tore down a building, and there was a garage left there. And then later Ron was forced to remove the garage. And it was a big go around. I mean, I was active in that not because I own the property, but I was a neighbor, and I didn't understand why they bulldozed the house, left the garage, and then made them go back and remove the garage. So, now I'm out riding on my boat and I drive by a house that's been bulldozed, and here sits a garage. And I'm just wondering, why are we doing this again? It reminds me of the hill across the street with the runoff. And I just feel like the township's replaying over and over situations that's developed hardship in our community, not hardship, but more just negative feelings by people. It's like, I was frustrated viewing it going, why is this still here if they tore down the house? There had to be a permit pulled, had to go through some type of approval. So maybe you guys could figure that out. I don't know if this is the right place to address it, but I have spoke numerous times about equal enforcement. You can't enforce one thing on somebody and not enforce that same thing on somebody else. It's an evident problem in this operation of the township. And I've spoke to that. You can look at the minutes every year, it seems like, for 7 years on this subject. So we need to figure out why that was unaddressed. Is it, maybe I'm missing something. I don't know. It just didn't seem like it's right that, and that, somebody's probably gonna have to go back and tear it down, and they shouldn't have. So why is this replay? So that's all I have for tonight right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's 6921 Berger Southeast.
Thank you.
Good evening. Paul Strauss, 7474 Alaska Ridge. I'd like to talk about the American Rescue Plan funds. As you're aware, our neighborhood does not have access to reliable internet. I believe we are one of the only neighborhoods, if not the only neighborhood in Cascade Township that does not have cable internet. You're also aware that we're still going through a pandemic that has already caused lockdowns, forced a majority of us to work or go to school from home. And unfortunately, we're not out of the woods yet. Currently in our neighborhood, our only options for internet are cellular and satellite, both of which are typically have poor upload speeds. Data limits are expensive and often unreliable. We asked for help before when the township was awarded the first coronavirus relief funds, which were to be used to help navigate the impact of the COVID-19 outbreak on our community. The township declined our request, but chose to spend over $25,000 on laptop computers for township staff. That seems like a logical use of these funds, considering you all and your staff were forced to work from home as well. But now imagine you live in our neighborhood. Those brand new laptops aren't very useful if you don't have reliable internet. You now have a second opportunity to directly help your taxpaying citizens with the $2 million of American Rescue Plan funds, $1 million of which you already have. As Manager Swayze mentioned at the board meeting on April 14th, these funds can be used to expand broadband internet. Furthermore, it states on the U.S. Department of Treasury website that recipients of ARP funds have broad flexibility to decide how best to use this funding to meet the needs of their communities. It also specifically mentions using the funds to expand access to broadband internet. We are part of the Cascade community. We need reliable, affordable, high-speed internet now. We are formally asking you to use some of the ARP funds to bring cable-based internet to our neighborhood. Only cable-based internet is capable of reliably delivering the upload speeds required for things like video conferencing, cloud computing, and other applications required to work or go to school from home.
30 seconds.
With the Delta variant on the rise and school right around the corner, we're asking you to make this a priority and fund this project as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strauss.
Thank you, Paul.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aspen Strauss, and I also live at 7474 Alaska. And thank you for allowing me to speak today. I am a student who graduated in 2020 from Forest Hill Central High School. And I also just finished my first year at Grand Rapids Community College, and now I'm going into my sophomore year. Many of you here on the board and everyone listening has probably heard of our street, Alaska Ridge, more than you would like to. But there really is a reason why so many of us come up here to talk about it. Unlike many of you, we don't have access to good, great, or even reliable internet. We don't have access to broadband internet. And as you've heard many times, broadband internet is high-speed internet. And when we moved to our house 3 years ago, we honestly had no idea that this location wouldn't allow us to do some of the simplest of tasks online. So when COVID-19 started, GRCC decided to go online, similar to every other college in the country. From there, I was isolated in my home, where I had to attend Zoom classes, go to online websites, use online textbooks, and also take tests. Your typical college things. And I really don't think you'll believe me when I tell you how hard it was. Constantly, I would be kicked out of my Zoom classes because the internet connection wasn't strong enough, or my tests would close on me halfway through and I would have to send what sounded like the most pathetic, biggest excuse to my professors as to why I needed to retake my test. I couldn't send a simple email, nor could I look up something on Google. And when the state started to open back up, then I would have to drive from where I live to get access to the internet. I would go to Panera, the library, my mom's office, just so I could do my homework. I had to leave my house, waste my gas that I have to pay for myself just so I could do something. And I remember one night, it was about 10:30 at night. The internet worked to an extent, but as it normally does, completely stopped. I had an assignment due the next morning, so I had to drive out to my mom's office, and I stayed there until 1:30 in the morning just to get my homework done. Now on my street, there are about 10 kids, 10 students who got stuck online the same way that I did for a whole year. And there are so many working parents that had to continue working during the pandemic to provide for their families. I would love and try to see all of the creative ways that you and everyone on my street had to continue to work during these problems. And there were COVID relief funds, and there still are, to help people like us who really, really need it. Now I understand. To you, to everyone who has no problem getting connected to the internet, it's not your problem that it never got passed. And I understand why. Because on a daily basis, you don't have to deal with getting connected to the internet to do something simple as sending an email for work or doing anything like that. So you have no reason to care about a street that can't get connected to the internet. Now, someone once told me that a person's actions or their voice can change the world. And trust me, I know it sounds silly, but in reality, it really is true. We have 11 houses on our street, about 10 kids, and over 23 adults who all live on Alaska Ridge. Everyone on that street has a job that is important and essential to getting things done in this world. And we have so many students who are trying to learn to become better, to become who knows what in our world. So you've heard our facts, you've heard what we struggle with, and you've heard our argument, but we're still struggling. And not everyone can drop large amounts of money to individually bring the internet to us. And sadly, COVID-19 is nowhere near ready to disappear. So we're here, many of us are here from our street, once again, to ask you for help as residents of the Cascade Township. Thank you.
Thank you. Good job.
Sorry, guys, one more. Luann Strauss, 7474 Alaska Ridge. By the way, my daughter's spectacular. Again, just simply asking for help. I asked before as well. It's just, I work from home too. Well, not really, try. Being in the real estate industry, we have a lot of timely things that need to be with deadlines and things like that, that I just simply can't do from home. I have to, it definitely is something that in our neighborhood certainly impacts people's decision to live there. We live in a very unique area, but without high-speed internet, it certainly is something that people will not accept. And so again, I'm just simply asking you guys to reconsider and to really help us out. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hi there. Excuse me. Thank you, Keely Shea, Alaska Ridge. Good to see all of you again. So thankful for our neighborhood. So you've all heard.
Your address?
Sure. 7486 Alaska Ridge, Southeast, Alto, Michigan.
I heard that was sold, so I was curious.
I'm sorry?
I heard that place was sold.
Really? Yeah, I'm still there.
Okay.
Would you like me to continue speaking?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. God works in mysterious ways. So I am here, truly, I am thankful for all of this, but once we finally do the right thing here for the people, and thank you so much, Aspen, for sharing it. The kids is the reason I spoke up. I don't even use internet, very little. So anyway, but at the last board meeting, I submitted a statement, well, actually 16 pages of documents, and I gave them to all of you, and I asked them to be put into the record, laying out clearly that they were papers that came from Manager Swayze showing how CARES funds were, I am going to say it appears at best, no, they were misused. They were spent on Dominion voting systems instead of our internet. And on the board minutes, it states that these are in the packet. They were attached to the packet. I've gone through, I tried to go through all 400 pages that are in that packet. Can somebody tell me where they are, what page number?
They're part of the permanent supplement. The papers that you gave are part of the permanent supplement.
Does that mean they're online available to everyone? No.
No.
Well,
They're available in the office.
oh, well, can we have them added so that anybody, when it says the supplement, how do you get the supplement? I would think that would be attached to the minutes.
I guess I assumed that it was part of the packet.
I can check on that.
Thank you, because we would like an answer to that we asked for at the last meeting. I don't see any of it noted here. So besides getting internet for Alaska, we have a much greater problem. And if we don't address that problem, then this will continue to happen. So I'm just asking that you all truly follow through on this, because here's the thing, and we've all said it. I'm just going to say it. This whole setup here is kind of a joke. It's like you guys sit up there like you're the Supreme Court, but we're the people that actually chose you and elected you. So we actually hold the power. And with you, we want to work with you, but please, please just do the right thing. And because I like to share a quote. Here is a quote from Thomas Jefferson, because I really think all of this that's going on, we can solve this one problem for Alaska Ridge, but if we don't address the problem at this level, it's the same thing that's going on at the state and the federal levels. And it's we, the people, it's not your fault. We haven't done our job as the people paying attention. So Thomas Jefferson said, if a law is unjust, a man is not only right to disobey it, he is obligated to do so. So thank you for listening, and thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Shea, it's not on the agenda tonight, but just so that you know, thank you for bringing that up 2 weeks ago. And we're reviewing it and it's in the process, but
Okay.
the answer will be public.
Okay, and I would like those papers made public, please. That is the right of all of us. Thank you.
Mr. Merlin?
I'd like to address Craig Merlin, by the way, 6333 Thorn Hills Court, Southeast. I'd like
Planning
to,
Commissioner.
excuse me?
Commissioner Merlin, technically.
I'd like to raise a couple of issues, and I'm going to shorten it, so it will be in the 3 minutes. But on one matter on your agenda, which I think is 0732021, which is where you are changing the way you are conducting board meetings so that people who are not able to interact with the board in real time unless they're here in the building, well, that effectively disempowers or even disenfranchises to a degree a significant number of residents of Cascade who are in assisted living facilities without cars, who are disabled, who can't drive at night, particularly in the winter. And I don't know, I understand there are technical issues involved, but I would hope an exception could be put in so that, I mean, I understand why you would want people in the building, but let's not lose track of those people who may not be able to do it with any significant ease. I being one of those. And I only do it because like Cascade Township. But by the way, also in that matter, in the policy statement, you mentioned specifically viewing, but do not mention this as a mechanism in terms of the YouTube use and the like. You don't mention it as a way to induce citizens to comment so you can listen to their reactions, both at and after meetings. Even just adding at the end and provide comments on or questions about matters might be a way to at least make it seen and provide some evidence that you really want to hear from the citizens. That's item one. Item two is code of ethics issues. Now, I was going to raise Alaska Ridge, but I think it's been dealt with to some extent tonight. I was also going to raise the issue of the FOIA matters that Ms. Shea has brought up before, and I'm glad Supervisor Lesperance is being dealt with. So I won't raise that one because I do think it ought to be brought to a conclusion. The Dominion voting seems awfully unusual to me.
30 seconds.
Okay. But I also have a group of invoices that I have found where this township entered into orders with its supervisor at the time and continues to do so over the last 7 years. I haven't investigated them all, but there are over 40,000 and over 14,000 this year alone. That, without notice that I have ever seen to the board, without notice that I've ever seen to the public, of what is clearly a direct conflict of interest. Interestingly, the employees couldn't enter into those kind of contracts with the township because they have a code of ethics that apply to them. The planning commission members couldn't because we have a code of ethics applying to us. But according to town manager Swayze, he says that he's unaware of any rules of conduct or conflict policy or ordinance specific to the township board. That strikes me as a very large gap. And the final element is it would certainly help me to have somewhere on the website where we could find it, a list of the major matters on which that are currently in process and where we, the public, can expect to see a significant step toward completion of that project, and then a final completion date with an expected cost number and the person responsible for achieving on time and on budget delivery of those major events. It would sharply increase transparency and accountability and would be a system to create shared expectations between the government of Cascade and the citizens of Cascade. As changes occur to costs or time schedules, as they do, the chart can be on the website, could be corrected as you tell the public why the change occurred. If we'd had that in place on the town hall, we would not have gotten into a dispute as to whether the building was completed on time and on budget. It could be done with PFAS. When is the shovel going into the ground to put pipes in place? And it can certainly be done on the Fire Station 1 projects as well. And with that, I conclude.
Thank you, Mr. Merlin. Do we have anyone virtually wishing to comment?
If you are joining us virtually, if you would raise your hand and hit *9 if you are on a telephone.
And just to clarify, we've had raising your hand. We're still limiting public comments to this portion. So if hands are raised via Zoom during the meeting where there's not public comments, we won't be answering those.
That's
I should
right.
have commented.
I saw a raised hand by someone on Zoom. Did you want to raise that again? Just wait a second, it takes them a minute. It looks like there are no more.
That concludes this portion of public comment. Next, Article 6, approval of consent agenda. Is there discussion or a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda with a couple of changes. Item 1, Township Board, that date should be July 14, not July 12th. And then we can add the packet that was previously mentioned into the electronic record of the minutes as requested.
Is there a second?
I support the motion.
It's a motion by Clerk Slater to approve the consent agenda, changing one of the dates and also adding the packet referenced by Ms. Shea at the previous meeting to the electronic recording, seconded by Trustee Shipley. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Article 7, we have no financial actions this evening. And Article 8, unfinished business, we have no unfinished business tonight. Article 9, new business, item 067, 2021, outdoor gathering permit for Sparks Belting Company. Ms. Corhorn?
Sparks, excuse me, Sparks Belting Company would like to hold an outdoor gathering at their place of business at 5005 Craft Avenue on August 6th. This will take place from 12 noon until 3:30 p.m. And we do have an outdoor gathering ordinance that states that any outdoor event that exceeds 200 persons must apply for this permit. They have estimated that they will have around 200 to 250 people. However, it's going to be an open house style event. And because it's open house style, they do not expect more than 100 people on the site at any time. So food trucks will be available to on site. And they've got the water, they've got restroom facilities. They will be providing additional porta pots. However, they do have security, first responders on site for the event, but obviously any additional police protection that's required will be served by the King County Sheriff's Department and fire protection by the Cascade Fire. Vehicles will park on site for the event, and they will have security there assisting with traffic control. And both Deputy Diepa and Chief Majors are aware of the event as well as the layout for the event. Neither one of them had any concerns or any additional questions. And there is further information in your packet. There will not be any band for this event. They will have a microphone for announcements, but noise should not be an issue. So again, they are looking for the outdoor gathering permit for August 6th from 12 until 3:30.
Is there a motion or discussion?
I'll make a motion to approve the permit for the gathering.
Support.
It's a motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Trustee McDonald to approve the outdoor gathering permit for Sparks Belting Company. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
you.
Item 068, 2021, issuance of an RFP for construction manager services for Fire Station Number 1. I believe we have Lieutenant Detweiler here tonight to talk about it or answer questions. Thank you. We also have Trustee Nordhook. Really,
We're just moving forward here. This is the next step in our process. Getting our construction manager RFP put together to work with Williams. And then on the next agenda item is going to be our test one, phasing environmental hazardous stuff before the tear down. So I'll leave that up to you. Any
Yeah, I don't know
comments?
if I have a whole lot more to add, except for, right, exactly. The first steps are getting these surveys, right? So we get our hazardous material survey, and then the phase 1 environmental survey. And both of these take a considerable amount of time, right? So the phase 1 environmental survey, part of it was a 4-week process, another part of it was a 6-week process. So we'd like to keep the project moving forward. We kind of need to get these going, so then we can start demolition, and then from there, right, we can start working on the rest of the project.
how's the time frame so far for the fire department?
It's been great with Williams. We've already had our first kickoff meeting, so we've already started to discuss things that, as a fire department, that we'd like to see and kind of go over what we've already worked on for the last year, and just showing him, hey, these are our concerns. There's things that are must for us, as far as space, as far as rooms. And they've been very receptive to everything we've had to say. It was a great meeting. Yeah, we really, I'm going to enjoy working with them as facilities officer.
Good, thank you. Treasurer Pierce?
Lieutenant, do you know the status of the lease with the airport?
So my understanding is that's still in the process. I believe it's moved a little bit further. My understanding it was with the lawyers still, kind of working on that. So as far as I haven't been able to get in there to start working on any kind of revamping it so that we can move in yet.
Trustee
I
Shipley?
can add a couple things. The contract that the airport wanted went to our lawyers for review. So it's in their hands right now for their okey dokey. Also, the RFP for the construction manager will be a watchdog for the township's dollars. And it was either the construction manager or the owner's rep. And we felt that with the construction manager, it'd be less likely to have overruns and also a seamless transition from step to step to step. And that's where the committee stood.
Thank you.
Lieutenant, the way I got some questions answered by Tim, but Williams is our main interface, correct? They're really the general, if you will, on this. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah,
So
so they're the
from our-
general, and then they're going to work with whoever we select in this construction manager support services to help bid out and monitor the bids. And I just want to make sure I understood that correctly.
Correct.
But your main interface is still going to be, our main interface is going to be Williams
Yes. Yep.
through the whole project.
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, thanks.
I make a motion that we go forward with issuing an RFP for the construction manager.
Support.
It's a motion for the issuance of an RFP for construction manager for Fire Station Number 1, made by Trustee Shipley, supported by Trustee McDonald. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And then we've got one more, Lieutenant,
Sorry.
but hopefully it'll be quick. 069, next up, 2021, and that's the proposals from Preen and Newhoff for the materials and testing consultants for Phase 1 of the environmental study and the hazardous materials survey. Same project. Anything you'd like to add, or?
It's one of those necessary evils, right? In order to tear down a building that's as old as, the old township is and the current fire station, we have to go through the whole abatement or make sure there isn't any asbestos or lead paint. That's kind of where all this comes in. And then the environmental survey will be checking old records to make sure there wasn't, I'm sure some of you know, right, as an old insulation factory to make sure there isn't anything in the ground. So they'll do the boreholes and they'll check around to make sure there isn't any kind of contaminants or anything hidden in there that we need to know about that could cause potential problems in the future. So these are, like I said, necessary evils that we move forward with to keep the project on track.
Thank you.
Question? Say they do find something, since it was an insulation company, that would then come to the board with an additional request for covering that cost?
That would be my understanding. It would have to be abated
Depending
at some
on
point, right?
how
Yeah,
many
depending on what it was, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Right.
Just a little bit of background there too. The station did have an underground diesel tank on the south side of the building when we bought the station. As mentioned, it was also foam insulation warehouse. Diesel tank was removed to the best of my knowledge, so there shouldn't be any residue in the ground there. It was intact when it was removed. And one of the concerns with this site, of course, is being so close to the creek down the hill there. We want to make sure that there's no runoff during the construction phase. So that's why this step is so important. And it should be very quick to get done.
Thank you.
And then I have another one there. These two things are going to run at the same time. So it's not like we're using 6 or 8 weeks in the one and 6 or 8 additional weeks in the other. They're going to be running at the same time to keep things moving forward.
Right.
If we hit environmental issues, we would have hit environmental issues no matter which way we went if we're going to use that site.
Mhm.
If we do, it's got to be cleaned up. Hopefully we don't hit anything, but that's what that test is for. So
Correct. Yep.
Thank you. You guys have done a really nice job with the whole process.
Thank you.
I make a motion to go ahead with the environmental study and testing for the site.
Second?
It's a motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Clerk Slater, to approve or to go ahead with accepting proposals from Preen and Newhoff and Materials Testing Consultants for Phase 1 Environmental Study and Hazardous Materials Survey for Fire Station 1. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Lieutenant. Have a good night.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Item 070-2021, revision to policy for township board committees. This one is my agenda item. Straightforward, we keep hearing references to subcommittees, different subcommittees that are 3 members of this board that meet once a month. We have 4 different committees that meet once a month, Wednesday mornings. Right now, those are not on the regular calendar. We have a duty to comply with the Open Meetings Act, which means any deliberations on public matters, discussions or decisions be made publicly. The Open Meetings Act is very strict and it's pretty clear. We had a legal memo prepared by our attorneys, basically said just because we call a subcommittee may be called advisory only, or just because there's less than a quorum, meaning not enough to have a vote, so 3 members in this case, that's irrelevant to whether a group of members of this board are subject to the Open Meetings Act. It's determined by what we do at those meetings. And if we're deliberating on public policy issues, we're determining what types of business goes in front of the board as a whole, or performing any other governmental functions, including making recommendations. That's all subject to the OMA. So to comply with that, I propose that we make 2 simple additions to our current Cascade Township policy on township board committees. And that is simply, and it's referenced in the agenda, Part C, regular meetings, adding at the end, as well as that they will be put on the township website meeting calendar. And then Section 5 of Part C, strike when applicable and simply have township committees will abide by the Open Meetings Act. So is there a discussion or questions or a motion?
I move to approve the highlighted areas that are added as described by Supervisor.
Discussion?
Second.
We've had several, yeah, I'm happy to second, yeah. We've had several residents also express interest, like being on the public service or the safety committee. And I think that it would behoove the township to welcome them perhaps and say, hey, do you want to be on the public safety committee or the governance committee? I think the input from the residents is imperative. And that's all I have to say, but I'm going to second Tom's motion.
Thank you. Treasurer Pierce.
I've been on the board for almost 12 years and I've participated in those advisory committees. By making it subject to the Open Meetings Act, we'll make it more difficult to conduct the meetings, but I think in the spirit of transparency, it's necessary. So I support it.
I'd just like to add, Ken, that when there are things that are private in nature, such as personnel matters, we're allowed by the Open Meetings Act to go into a closed session, which then, because those would be inappropriate for public, people in the public on those meetings. So in those cases, I would assume that we could go into closed hearing, and I'll ask counsel about that.
Yeah, so it's a good question. The enumerated purposes for going into a closed session are under 15.268 of the Open Meetings Act, right? And there's a series of them, one of which is to consider periodic evaluations or complaints or charges against, say, a public official or officer. But that has to be at the request of that person, of the request of the named individual. And even then, it's dependent upon the board's concurrence, right? So let's say you have a charge or complaint against me. I'm a public officer. I can write you a message because I generally require it in writing. I can write you and say, pursuant to that section of the OMA, I want to go into closed session to discuss these charges or complaints. The board has the right to say, no, we don't want to.
You also have the right to say, yes, we will. The employee then, at any time during that closed session, can withdraw the request, in which case you have to immediately terminate that closed session and return to an open session, okay? We do that, it's permitted by the Open Meetings Act because there are sensitive issues that may have to be discussed, particularly with respect to complaints or charges that are not yet proven either, right? And so that gives you a mechanism by which to protect everybody involved until a determination can be made about charges or complaints.
What about yearly evaluation, Scott, not disciplinary matters?
Yeah, so a periodic evaluation of a public employee can also be done in closed session at the request of the employee. Same rules apply. Okay.
Must be initiated by the employee.
It has to be at the request of the employee. So the board cannot unilaterally do it if there is no request by the employee to go into closed session. That's right.
What about inappropriate conduct? But not, is that by an employee?
Well, to the extent that there
spending.
are charges or complaints, right? So that complaint can take various forms. Like that complaint could be by the township board itself, right? Saying, you know, we think employee X has engaged in inappropriate conduct and this is why. Then that employee has the right to request a closed session or not. If they don't, then the board cannot adjourn into closed session to discuss those complaints or charges. Okay.
Is the board accountable or responsible to let the employee know that they can, to let the employee know that they can submit a request for the board to take this into a closed session? So for example, if the board made the decision, we don't want to have a closed session, but the employee didn't know that they could request it, is there some kind of accountability to the board for making it known to the employee or that they have that option?
Yeah, so so we always advise employees that they have the right to request it, but the board has the right to say, no, we're not going to go into closed session. So it has to be by agreement of both parties, right? One, at the request of the named employee, and two, if the board votes to go into closed session pursuant to a motion and roll call vote as required under the OMA. I'll just make one other comment because we're talking about committee meetings. So committee meetings are interesting because committee meetings are the determination of whether a committee less than a quorum constitutes a public body under the OMA is precisely dependent upon the function that they serve, okay? So there are advisory committees only. The problem with that is sometimes they delve into areas that become not advisory, but more deliberative in terms of what they're doing. I'll give you an example. If you appoint a subcommittee of the township board, right? Let's say 3 members of the board, and you say to them, look, we want you to go out and investigate X, whatever X is. And your charge is to gather all of the information that you may get on that issue and then bring it to the board, right? So the subcommittee then goes out, they gather all this information. I would tell you that's not a public body within the meaning of the OMA. Why? Because they're not making any decisions. They're simply gathering information to bring to the board. Now, contrast that with this scenario. We want you to go get information about X. And the subcommittee then is making choices, either conscious or unconscious, about what materials they might include within the scope of that gathering and what they might give to the board. In other words, let's say they gather a bunch of information and they say as a subcommittee, you know, we're not going to present this information to the board. We're only going to take this information to the board, right? That's a deliberative choice of that subcommittee, and within the scope of the OMA then is a public body. My general practice is when I'm dealing with municipal clients is if you're debating about whether or not it is or is not subject to the OMA, you should already be noticing that meeting and making it subject to public access, right? If you have to talk about what the purpose is that long, then it's not advisory, it's something else, and you might as well notice it under the OMA and comply. Why? Because there's no downside to that, right? The only downside is that it may take some extra time, public shows up, gives public comment. So yeah, it may cut down on the available work time that you have to get work done. But in that respect, you have no then potential liability from a violation of the OMA.
So are you saying advisory committees also fall under this, the scope of what we're about to pass?
As long what I would say is this, dependent upon the nature of the subcommittee, call it what you want, standing committee, advisory committee, whatever it is. We look at the nature of what they're doing, not necessarily what you call it, to determine whether or not it's a public body. Now, in the nature of your policy, I read your policy to mean particularly for standing committees, we're going to make those all subject to the OMA. We're going to notice those. We're going to comply with the requirements of the OMA. We're going to take minutes. We're going to have public comment, and that will fall within that scope. If there are committees that are truly advisory, and there aren't many, then they would not be considered a public body within the context of the OMA. But it's a very fine line. You can run afoul of that very easily.
So what I'm hearing is to be safe, we should put them all in.
Yes. Yep. Like I said, if you have to talk about it very long, just notice them up as public meetings. And, you can hold those meetings whenever you want to hold those meetings. But if you notice them and you take minutes and you allow public comment, you've complied with all of the requirements of the OMA and you have nothing to worry about then.
We'll keep you on speed dial.
Yeah.
I have a question, if I may, Supervisor. Just wondering about the matter of subcommittees allowing, obviously allowing the public to come in and having notice and all that sort of thing. You just made the comment about it could cut down on your work time if you allow public comments. Now, from my background in elections, for example, we allow people to come watch the polls, challengers and so forth. They may watch, they may not touch anything, they may not interfere with the workers. Is this public observing the committee doing their work? Or is it all of a sudden it's a town hall meeting and anybody can say whatever they want?
Only in conjunction with the rules established. So for example, you have public comment here tonight, right? Same rules apply to those public body meetings of those committees. So 3 minutes designated public comment, right? Now, it depends on where you want to put that, right? You could either put it at the beginning of an agenda or at the end. Sometimes if you put it at the beginning and you get a lot of public comment and let's say you've only allocated an hour for that meeting and now the public comment is 45 minutes long, you've got 15 minutes within the scope of that, or you're going to extend the meeting time that way. So that's why I understand it may create an extra burden on the work time available, but in the end, if you're debating on whether or not these are meetings that should be open to the public, I tend to come down on the side of notice them under the Open Meetings Act, take minutes, allow public comment, and then you have nothing to worry about.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I don't remember who did the motion.
Donald and Shipley.
Okay, it's a motion by trustee McDonald, supported by trustee Shipley to make the the revisions as outlined in the policy for township board committees. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Item 071, request to use ARP funds for the internet. This is specifically for the Alaska Ridge neighborhood. We heard from many tonight. The ARP funds were just over $2 million. And I got a letter from those residents, put it on the agenda. Does anyone have any discussion, questions? Trustee?
Yeah, I think somewhere in a previous meeting, there was an estimate on the cost to have a cable run there. Does anybody have record of that?
60 to 80,000.
60 to 80,000?
Yeah, I think I had around 65
Okay.
or 60. It might even, that was on the high side, I thought, but I'm not sure.
I got just a few comments here. I have no problem with that, as long as we treat the rest of the township the same way. We go out 36th Street or 52nd Street and we have, a half a dozen houses, whatever the township sets up as a guideline, maybe 6 houses or more. Then we have to consider that also equally. And I have no problem with that. I think that the people along Alaska Ridge, now, I used to work for AT&T. I was a heavy construction manager, so I'm telling you what you're going to run into. The county is going to tell them where they can bury the cable, what side of the road. They're going to tell them where they can place the pedestals. And so the cable company's going to come along, bury the cable, put the pedestals there. And then it's going to be your responsibility, to hook up from that pedestal to your house. The township's not going to pay for that. Every house is going to be different. The cable company is going to decide by footage and how many trees they got to bore underneath of, or if they're going to run it aerial. That's going to be between the residents and the cable company. I already looked into other venues of like the telephone company, it's high-speed internet. Oh, guess what? In your neighborhood, it's not available. Okay. Okay, you know that. So there are really no other options for providing cable or high-speed service to that neighborhood.
I'd just like to. Oh, go ahead, Ken.
I voted against this the first time it came up. But I agree with John that we should get the information together on what is our outside liability in the township. And I was very convinced by the young woman who talked about her experiences. She kind of convinced me to change my mind. So thank you for your comments.
Good thing you showed up tonight.
Yeah, I would like to move to approve, but I think it's contingent on a couple of important things. The first is, and as Mr. Merlin has told us many times, we don't know what the exact costs are. We had a quote from November of 2020, and AT&T does not do the work. John, you probably know.
Correct.
They subcontract out others. So AT&T has to go out and get the quotes, bring them together, do their markup or whatever, and then come back to us.
It's Comcast.
Comcast.
Yeah,
Comcast. Comcast has to go out, get the subcontract, put their markup in it, and come back to us with a proposal. So I think to vote affirmatively, I think I would like to approve this contingent upon that, one, we get a firm quote back, because Mr. Merlin has told us many times, don't vote on something that you don't have a firm cost on. Second, that's very importantly, is we need to, I understand that there's a county meeting on August 5th, and the county is pulling together all the municipalities as well as Comcast, Charter, AT&T, and others to come up with what they might do with some of their funds. Meaning, there might be a cost-sharing program in the works by the county. So if we look at what we do with the roads as an example, we have a 50-50 split on the roads where we pay 50% for the most part, and the county pays 50%. It would behoove us probably, it'd be very prudent to find out what the result is of this meeting before we make any final commitment, because I would hate to make a commitment to spend X thousands of dollars and then come to find out that we lost county matching funds. And we'll learn, I think, after August 5th, what these are about, and then we'll be in a better position to know, and hopefully AT&T would have a proposal back to us.
I talked to Commissioner Bolter, our own county commissioner, today about that. And there is the meeting. She said that there was the hope of possible 50-50 based on need-based throughout the county, but that's throughout all of Kent County. And it was with this ARP, we have until 2026. So she didn't think that would be.
That they would enact it in time.
Yeah, that before, at least in the next 12 months. And she also stressed that it was more of an exploratory committee. So you've got people on that who are representatives of the smaller cable companies, but right now Comcast is the broadband that realistically the infrastructure is so expensive that.
I think when that committee does meet, they're going to look at a lot of those little pockets up in northern Kent County and say, oh golly, we got a trailer park over here with 35 trailers or whatever, and they'll probably focus on those. And unfortunately, the way the government works, you can turn gray before you get an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would rather go ahead with approving this and put a cap on.
65,000, I think, is a.
Yeah, I'd say, let's say $70,000. That gives it a little slush area. And Comcast, with the permits that they got to pull from the county, et cetera, they are never in a position where they're going to fluff up the bill. The county watches that pretty closely, as they do with Restoro and proper bearing depth and all that.
Comcast, I don't know if we told the residents, Comcast got a lot of federal grant money for internet, and they had applied for your neighborhood, and unfortunately, we didn't get it. So
Why was that? Not enough houses or?
I don't know, maybe we're,
They probably looked at the number of houses and the number of residents to be served. That's how that normally goes. If we go forward with this tonight, then it would be up to the township to make the contract with Comcast or notify them to start their engineering process.
we already have, yep, and we've got that ready to go because it's,
You didn't tell the people about that?
well, I'm just saying,
Closed meeting act. Okay, that's.
staff
that's
is on top of that. So the other thing though, someone mentioned Comcast, because they service the township primarily, they keep the information on who's got it, who doesn't. So what staff recommended was that we include in our motion to direct staff to develop an instrument to determine what other areas of the township are without broadband.
Exactly, and that's what we should do.
And in need of the same. So far, your neighborhood is the only one we've heard from.
Didn't Manager Swayze look into that at one point?
He's tried to.
Yeah, I that's what I've heard. And he had heard years ago or several years ago, there's an area out Grand River, kind of on the edge towards Lowell, but he hasn't. So far you guys are the only
I would just
squawkers.
ask, before you put a cap on it, can you, I mean, obviously we all want it to be done as quickly as possible, but before you put a cap on it, can you do your due diligence one more time to make sure that 65,000 is the number or is at least in the ballpark?
I think to get it rolling tonight, if we keep it at 70, but then 2 weeks from now, we can always come back and add more.
We can approve more. That's not a problem. The important thing is to get their engineering department out there to start doing their surveys and put some pencil marks on the paper, so to speak.
Then I would move to approve the ARP funds for this contingent upon one getting back, or I mean, with a cap of 70,000. Second, that we move with Comcast to get a firm proposal because we need to know the actual cost.
So we have to, yeah.
Yeah.
I think if we have a contract with Comcast, we can ask them to identify any other areas in the township that don't have broadband service.
Yeah, it's in their best
That's the onus
interest.
on them.
And I believe the county has data, so we could ask the county for any data as
I
well.
support Tom's motion.
So that's a motion by trustee McDonald, supported by trustee Shipley, to approve the use of ARP funds for Comcast broadband internet for the Alaska Ridge neighborhood, up to $70,000, including a written firm proposal from Comcast, and then also to include that the board's directing staff to develop an instrument to determine what other areas of the township are without broadband internet.
Can I ask a question? There's another Alaska street in there?
Well, it's Alaska Avenue, so there's two houses. He lives in one of them, and then my.
We should
neighbor
add that
lives
to the
in other
motion.
one.
Yeah, do you have internet, sir?
No.
They're in the same boat. His house has been. there
Well,
for
So we
over
should add them to
100
the motion.
Alaska Avenue and Alaska.
Those,
Ridge.
how about all residents that aren't currently, that don't have access to broadband internet? Specifically this region?
Alaska Avenue and Alaska Ridge. That would cover both.
Yeah, that would
Okay.
cover-
all signed the letter.
Oh, yes. Roll call, Clerk Slater?
Trustee Shipley,
Yo, yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes?
trustee McDonald,
Yes.
trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes. So motion carried. Thanks for your patience, Alaska Ridge. Item 072, 2021, appointments to the Strategic Plan Advisory Committee. It was trustee Shipley was nice enough to be willing to serve. And then for the planning commissioners, we have Commissioner Merlin here tonight. And then also Commissioner Nordyke, Chris Nordyke, who's a longtime planning commissioner. And he also, we get a 2-for-1 with him because he's on the PFAS Advisory Committee, living in one of those houses that's affected with that's currently contaminated. For the Downtown Development Authority, we've got Michelle Kalela. She actually has a background in, I think it's from the private sector, but planning and strategic planning, she's fantastic. And then lastly, Mike Reese from our Parks Committee. He works for a large company that does planning, again, private sector, but he just came up with a fantastic questionnaire specifically for parks that's gonna go out to residents, and so everyone's great, but really, we're really lucky to have a few members who are fantastic in this area already. So again, advisory only, but those are my appointments.
You require a motion on that, or is that just a okey dokey?
Technically,
I make a motion then to approve supervisors' appointments.
Second.
that's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee Nordhook, to approve the appointments for the Strategic Planning Advisory Committee in the memo. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 073, 2021, policy for streaming and recording of township meetings. This was, I believe, Governance Committee
Yes.
came up with this.
Yes, thank you Supervisor Lesperance. As you may have noticed, I am not Ben Swayze, but I will do my very best to fill in his stead. He is not able to be here this evening. So from April 2020 through June 2021, the Township Board, as well as other boards and commissions of the Township, held remote and/or hybrid meetings due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The authorization for these meetings first came from the emergency orders from the governor and later from changes to the Open Meetings Act. With the expiration of the Kent County Local Emergency Declaration in June of 2021, the Township Board and Commissions are subject to the Open Meetings Act are no longer able to meet remotely unless under very specific circumstances. The Township Board currently has a remote meetings policy that will remain in place if circumstances arise where the Township Board is able and chooses to conduct a remote meeting. However, the pandemic has also proved the benefit of streaming, broadcasting, and recording the township meetings as a permanent policy. After discussions with and at the direction of the Governance Committee, the attached policy and procedure document was developed to provide guidance for how the Township Board and other commissions of the boards of the township will handle the streaming, broadcasting, and recording of their public meetings. And attached for your review are the draft policy for the streaming and recording meetings. The proposed policy states that it is the policy of the Cascade Township Board that all meetings of the Township Board and of those of boards and commissions of authority of the township shall stream the proceedings of the meeting in real time in order to provide remote viewing opportunities to the public. In addition, recorded meetings will be archived and permanently made available to the public for review. Some highlights of this policy include streaming will be done via the Township YouTube channel. Meetings will be recorded and permanently archived. Links to the recording will be posted on the website within 3 days of the meeting, and once available, will be promoted on social media. When available, meetings will be rebroadcast on government cable access stations. Links to the meeting streams will be prominently placed on the agendas of the respective meetings and on the website where the meeting is noticed. Public interaction will be limited to in-person attendees of the meeting. Public comments received in writing at least 8 hours prior to the meeting will be summarized during the public comments and made a part of the permanent supplemental record of the meeting. If a meeting is made remote per the authorization available in the Open Meetings Act, the Township Remote Meetings Policy will dictate remote public interaction. Policy applies to the Planning Commission, Zoning Board of Appeals, Downtown Development Authority, Brownfield Redevelopment Authority as well. The Governance Committee discussed this item at their June meeting and agreed that the ability for residents to view meetings, either live or recorded, was a practice that needed to continue in order to maintain the transparency improvements it has provided. The committee also recommended that the public comments should be reserved for in attendance members in order to promote meeting attendance and ensure the integrity of the public comment process. Staff have inquired into the policies of other local Kent County communities, including Grand Rapids, East Grand Rapids, Kentwood, Wyoming, Granville, Walker, Grand Rapids Township, Ada Township, Gaines Township, Plainfield Township, and Sparta. All have indicated or are in the process of adopting similar policies. As far as financial considerations, the township invested funding in 2020 to outfit the Wisner Center with the necessary equipment to stream meetings, and at this time, no other equipment is necessary. However, township staff is also reviewing the entire Wisner Center AV system with our communication system contractor to explore ways to increase reliability. And Manager Swayze recommended the approval of the Cascade Township policy for streaming and recording township meetings.
Trustee
Comments?
Shipley?
Of course, I've got comments. First of all, I think you do a great job with setting it all up. I know that you've had some difficulty in the past with the system all of a sudden dropping dead. I'm guessing that you guys are going to look at that and try and improve that if necessary.
Yes, sir.
Don't call me sir, I was a career NCO. Next, I heard Mr. Merlin and his concerns. And I've got to echo Mr. Merlin's concerns. I think that interaction of the people that cannot get here is imperative. And I would like to see that part changed so that they could come in with comments at the appropriate time and be on record.
I just want to verify what John and Craig said, because I have neighbors who are elderly also, and they can't get to every meeting. And they are going to have comments or would like to have, they may like to have comments. And to, exclude those comments would be really unfair. So, I agree that we need to try to make it, if at all possible, based on the technology, to allow public comment be given remotely. And if we ask questions, and again, public comment does not mean it's a give and take, a Q&A, but we ought to allow public comment from those remote.
As long as they understand, just like here, during public comments, we may not respond right away, but at least they go on record.
It's the same rules.
Same rules for whether they're here or not.
I don't think that it's been overly burdensome. Our technology may go out, but it's going to go out whether or not we allow public comment or not. So I think it's better to err on the side of.
Sue had a comment.
Clerk Slater?
On that point about public interaction being limited to in-person attendees of meeting, we talked about that, and there is a provision if they cannot attend, and that is to send a comment in writing. So that provision is there. There are people who, I can't get to the meeting, and yet they manage to get to the doctor, or they manage to get to church, or they manage to get to Walgreens. They manage to get where they need to go. So we're wanting to reward the effort of those who come. That's the thinking behind that. There's, and others may not agree with me, but that's how I feel about it.
No, Sue, I understand your point and I agree, but I also know that there are elderly people, particularly, I shouldn't just pick on or favor the elderly, but there are people who have challenges or can't get away. We had a woman, one of the meetings on the SAD say, I almost couldn't come because I have children at home and I'm a single mom. And so those situations, I don't think we should, I think we need to take into account that there are going to be people who just sometimes would like to be here and can't.
But there is the provision for that with the written in
But-
comments. That provision is there.
I think it's premature, especially we're not even out of the woods yet with restrictions and we're already set up. I think public comment, we should err on the side of including people. We didn't have one tonight.
Here now, I got to ask the techie. She's standing right there in front of us. What's your opinion? You're the one that runs all this gee whiz stuff.
Sure. I guess I would I guess with the comment in the memo about keeping the integrity of public comments, there just are times when, so a bunch of people join, so it just says iPad 1. And so it just would put staff in a position where we would say, iPad 1, you may speak in this public recorded live televised meeting. I don't know who they are, and they can say in your public meeting whatever they would like to say. So I guess staff's point was just, if it was unfortunate enough that there was something lewd or something else, there's just not anything that staff would be able
But
to
you-
do about that.
You do have the ability to push a mute button or something.
Sure.
If they start out on a tirade where they're gonna use F-bomb and some of the other things.
And the same thing happens live. We can't control Mr. Whitley or Mr. Merlin, but
It just includes additional staff, additional time to attend all of those meetings, to be able to, because staff that's presenting are not able to administrate the Zoom.
I gotta still side with Tom down there and say, hey, our mission here is to serve the people, and that's communications, two-way street. So sorry, boss, but I'm still confirmed that we need to be able to hear them.
I would keep the policy, which is kind of, except the public interaction limited to in-person. I would recommend we strike that and continue to accept public comments virtually.
And then staff would just ask, please let us explore the options on YouTube, because if we are going to change forms, I'm not 100% sure what that interaction would look like.
Yes, and if you need some more support, let us know, because we've invested a lot of money in the system and we're in a position where we can help, but we just need to know.
Well, that's the other thing, because I've had considerable conversations with System Manager Fast, and it has been a very strong drain on staff resources in terms of having to have someone there at every single meeting, every committee, every authority, to be able to run the technology. I mean, I don't know, maybe we have to hire a person that does just that, but with the current staff we have, it has been a stretch. So I want to be considerate of our staff.
So is there a motion?
Where are we at? To accept it with change or accept it as is?
Do we have a motion on the floor?
I make a motion that we accept the policy with the addition of allowing public comment from remote users who follow the 3-minute guideline and identify themselves as well as their full address. Because we do need to know also if they are not from Cascade Township.
And working with the staff going forward.
And working with staff going forward to make other suggestions. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
whatever Stephanie needs there. I second Tom's motion.
So it's a motion by trustee McDonald to approve the proposed policy for streaming and recording township meetings, with the exception on the second page where it states limiting public interaction to in-person. That will not be incorporated. Public comments will continue to be allowed virtually as well, subject to the other restrictions that are in place for in-person. Time limit, information. All in favor?
I think there was a third.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Third condition, that was that we allow staff to do further investigation of how to handle this. Is that what you want to stop?
Yeah, and resources if needed.
Yes, because the other municipalities that we investigated with about using YouTube are not utilizing that feature. So I would just ask that if staff investigates YouTube and that YouTube isn't able to support what the board is asking, that we have some leeway to switch to a platform that does.
Absolutely.
Yep. And that's the third.
And support, so that would be the motion, supported by trustee Shipley. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Assistant Manager Fast. Thanks for all your hard work too. We do have the addition of the item added by trustee Nordhook. So that would be item 074, 2021. And that is a motion to approve the forensic the independent forensic accounting audit. Discussion or a motion? Yes.
Let me just go through a few things here that I've been doing a lot of research, watching people, talking with people, taking walks with members of the township, residents of the township, employees. We got a problem. And I want to try and solve this problem with a third party. So I've got a lot of fingers being pointed at people. There's conspiracies out there. Somebody's saying this, somebody else is saying that. Our employees are all wondering what's going on. They're afraid for their jobs and they don't need to be. But we've got conspiracy theories on the admin building. I walk in the lobby, I got a 110-degree lobby. We had new air conditioners, new furnaces. What happened to the money? I've got another part of that admin building is we had to have extra money for ADA. There's no ADA buttons walking in the building. Where'd that go? Why isn't that done? I've got this CARES Act money that's been brought up. How has that been shuffled around? What happened with the Dominion? Fingers pointing again. The hotspot before this all came in, the CARES money. Where'd the hotspots go when people needed it? And then the latest one was all the trinkets that are coming from the old supervisor's company, which was a surprise to me. But again, fingers going every which way, from the board to the committees to this group or that group and employees. And I'm just saying, let's all put our little fingers back in our holsters. Let's hire a independent forensic financial auditor. Have our attorney do that. Have them go out, look through all these records, come back and say, there's nothing. And then we all get together and move forward as a team and work for the people of this township. If there is something, we work through that something, put our holsters back on, and we all work together as a team for the people of this township. That's what I want to do. That's why I wanted to put this on there. So my motion is to put all this stuff to rest. I want a forensic financial audit done on those items, the admin building, the CARES Act, the hotspots, vendors. What's going on with vendors? So that's my motion.
Comments?
Yes, trustee Shipley.
Always looking on the positive side of things. I think that this audit is more than just finding something wrong. I think it's a procedural audit as well. There are things that perhaps we're doing improperly, and an audit like this can bring that up. There's a lot of money that goes by every day. I know as township board, we don't see all the nickel and dime purchases. I have no idea, but I think it's not a bad idea. Ken, you're the treasurer.
I'm concerned about the scope of the audit. And maybe Scott can weigh in on this on if the law firm hires the accounting firm, can you limit the scope?
Yeah, so at least as I understand the motion, the scope would be limited to those things mentioned by trustee Nordike, which was the administration building, the CARES Act, hotspot, vendors, and I think that was it.
That'd be fine.
There was also some talk about the process or procedure involved, but I think that would more come within the scope of what we do for you rather than an analysis of numbers, which is what the forensic auditor would do. So I can envision a scenario where we work with the forensic auditor. They do the tracking the dollars portion. We do then the process and manner of how those are allocated and spent through your normal everyday processes.
Yes. Can you recommend, so it remains independent, a financial auditor?
Yeah, we've worked with a few over the years.
Forensics.
Yep.
I have a comment. To your point, trustee Shipley, the expenditures day by day are in the financial reports that treasurer submits every month or so. So all of the expenditures are there and are visible.
Okay, thanks, Sue. Appreciate it.
Too much paperwork. So Timmy, your motion covers both the auditor and our legal counsel to both of them.
Yep, they're a team.
But as Scott just pointed out, that included the process side, right, Scott?
How
Mike,
about
I'm sorry, Mike.
works in conjunction with?
Mike, you work in conjunction with, and for Foster Swift to do the process side.
Yeah, so typically when we're looking at these issues, because we've been involved with situations like this before, there's the sort of the tracking of the money, which is what the forensic auditor will do. And then there's the appropriation side, or the manner or process in which those are appropriated, which is generally what we handle on the legal side, right? Because there are things that may fall under expenditures that your auditor will or will not be aware of in terms of whether they're lawful or not. You know, so.
Oh, sure. I see what you're saying.
Take, for instance, the comments tonight about some of the purchases on the trinkets, I think is, you know, I have some legal concerns over whether those are proper public expenditures. Okay. So I can tell you immediately, those things raise red flags with me. But we look at the process, the legality of them, and the auditor then tracks the dollars, right?
They do the numbers, you do the process and the legality
Correct.
side.
That's right.
Yeah, I just want to make sure it was a part of the process. Or, I'm sorry, part of your motion. Correct.
Support.
Thank you. Do I need to restate the motion or for record keeping, Clerk Slater? You're good? Okay, so that is a motion by trustee Nordhook, supported by trustee Shipley for, to approve an independent forensic financial auditing firm that we will hire, that will be selected by our township council and then work in conjunction with the township council. And the scope would include, let's say, stimulus, the allocation of stimulus funds in 2020, the admin, the new administration building remodel, and all vendors, including the employee appreciation gifts that have come up. Hotspots and CARES funds, so both those stimulus money, 2020 stimulus funds. And we will follow their direction to move forward on those. Clerk Slater, would you please call the roll?
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
trustee Shipley,
Yes.
clerk Slater, yes, supervisor Lesper.
Yes, motion carried.
Thank you.
Before we go into closed session, let's swap so that people aren't stuck. If anyone wants to make public comments right now, we'll do we'll do public comments first, here or virtual, and then the board will go into closed session. Commissioner Merlin?
Two comments on that last resolution. The third component that has to always be thought about is also that the public will gain trust as a result of that. And I know there is, the way I would have done it would have been in a private sector, would have been to approve an investigatory report and let the council, to be run by the council, let them hire the independent auditor or the forensic auditor, put them all together, But at the end of the day, the board also has to deal with the issue of how it then, in essence, sells the end product as being both independent and with enough facts that come out that will give the public some trust. Because Commissioner Nordhook, you are correct. There is a problem out there. And there is not a very trusting public. And we have to reverse that vortex. This is one element of reversing it. Having seen Ms. Shea's FOIA results were startling to me. Having seen those trinkets were startling to me. So now those both hurt trust. And so we have to figure out some way after they're complete with their job that there is enough information that goes out so the public has confidence that the process that was used was fair and that the result was comprehensive enough. So to accomplish the true objective of this, in my view, well, two objectives. One is to find out whether anything that was done wrong was wrong, but also to help the trust factor build back again.
Thank you. Oh, wait, 1 second, Mr. Whitley. We'll do Mr. Dion and then.
Jeff Dion. Hey, I really liked Mr. Merlin's comments. I think what I hear tonight is a breath of fresh air for Cascade Township. Thank you all very much. I like the new direction we're going. I think the biggest push that the residents have had against the board over the past years has been the closed concealment. You know, we're tired of concealment. Well, let's see what we got, you know. When my wife goes to the store and buys something or vice versa, I go and buy lobster and she's not happy about it. There's a discussion. We need that discussion. We want to know that you're spending our taxpaying dollars wisely and that they're being used appropriately. Thank you. That was the problem with the township hall. I mean, people came up in arms over that. So, and then to hear that there was overages on the new hall has us frustrated also. So let's end that nonsense and put this to bed and do what you need to do to get the citizens on your side and know that you're building a community that we all can trust. On the good notes, one that was discussed earlier, I just noticed yesterday when I talked to some of the park workers at Tassel Park. I met my kids there for a splash pad minute for my lunch, and the workers were out and they were working on the internet. And I said, oh, I didn't know we had internet there. Well, we have, but it was hooked up to the lights and went on at 10 o'clock at night for the last year after year after year. What kind of money did we waste? That's a great example. Put that on your audit. Why would that go on at when the night lights went on? Did you guys know about that?
That's the hotspot issue from
Good.
2020
It should be.
stimulus funds.
But what I liked is I'm sitting there and I can check my emails real quick and it all works seamlessly. Worked at Ada in the park. Thank you. That helps them go to a meeting. I can pull up there in my car in between something and have a private conversation or do a Zoom meeting when I can't, you know, I got a house full of kids. So thank you. I think that's really welcome. Good job with that. PFAS, I know there's some, Tim mentioned it, you know, I think Tim's done a good job at bringing up these subjects. I hear it from my friends in the neighborhood that are in the PFAS zone. They're looking for more information. If it's out there, I'm sorry, I missed it. I'm not saying it is or isn't, but the more you can do to educate them on what's being done with the water coming to them and the treatment, they're all on the edge of it. Some of them are a couple points below. I've had the right below it, but we don't get a filter. What can we do? When do we get water? So I don't know what you can do, but please communicate better for that one. Resolution to existing issues. That's great. That's one thing, you know, I'd like to know, like Mr. Merlin mentioned it. I'd like to know, like this house and this garage I mentioned, who follows up with me? I've asked questions at boards for years and really never got good follow-up. Maybe you could make the method and put the method to who's following up here and when that will be done and what an expected follow-up time ratio is, a week, a day, a month. that's helpful for us because a lot of times we don't have time to come back up here and do this again. Streaming meetings, excellent. We need that. I like to go back and look at meetings that I missed. Something came up, I look at it on the schedule, let us go back and look at it. It's one thing to take time to read the minutes. It's another to interact. I know a lot of people don't have time because they got kids or whatnot. They can't get up here. And again, on the fiscal audit, great, good job. And I really like the direction you're going. Thank you very much for your hard work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Whitley?
Thank you. I really support a lot of the stuff that's going on here, but it kind of disturbed me a little bit on the new item with the forensic audit. What I kind of heard was that there was a limit in scope, but there wasn't anything and I don't know how the steps should be going, but it's sort of like someone just got a blank check to do stuff. And it just seemed like there should have been something in there that, that other than just scope limit, that somehow or other defined what you're willing to spend to do that forensic audit. So that's my only concern. I'm not saying we don't need it. I'm just saying that, it almost looks like that step was sort of missed, and maybe that's the product of, infrequent meetings, and you can't, nickel and dime every little step there, but appreciate where you're going there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
After everything, I just want to say, and I want for publicly, thank you to you, Grace, because it was a year ago that I learned of you and reached out when I started looking at what was going on in the township. And without your openness to truly hearing the people, we wouldn't be here. So thank you. And to all of those of you who are supportive as well, just truly thank you. We are all in this for each other. So, and good luck to all of you. Thank you.
Any virtual comments?
If anyone would like to raise their hand on the Zoom meeting, I know there were a couple hands. Oh, we have one. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Hi there, Scott Van Salkema, 2570 Orange Court. I'm assuming you all can hear me.
We can.
Okay, thank you. I'm very grateful and happy that you guys did go along with the live streaming as well as the public comments. That's obviously why I'm commenting again. I don't know if you saw me. I popped in there a little bit early. I was had worked all day, had to do things with my daughter. I was listening to this as she was driving me around, doing some of her driver's training things. So I was able to listen. And when it got to the point, I was able to pop in and at least hear it live in person. So thank you all very much for approving that and going forward. So I was definitely happy to hear that. And that's all I have to say. So thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too.
I don't see anyone else's hand up, but can we wait a couple more seconds?
Sure.
I don't think anyone else is going to. Supervisor Lesperance, thank you.
So that will conclude public comments. I'll have an update on a couple of those issues briefly during the board comments, the SAD, the PFAS Advisory Committee made notes, follow-up comments. But for right now, we're going to go into closed session. And this is based on section 15.268E of the Open Meetings Act to discuss the sale or purchase of real property. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
It's a motion by Trustee Shipley, supported by Treasurer Pierce to go into closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Needs to be a roll call vote.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Homier.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
trustee McDonald,
Yes.
clerk Slater, yes, supervisor Lesperance.
Yes. We're now in closed session.
Oh, we have to go.
We have to go.
We're gonna go to historical.
Yeah, otherwise they gotta turn off the internet,
Yes.
back on and all that stuff.
Yeah, thank you. You too. All right, yep.
Well, and you know, like this morning, I have to do that.
Great. Yeah, you too.
So, and that's why I'm
Here. Me too.
I'll be better keep coming to the meeting, all you guys.
Come back. And do that in closed session. No.
I will stay around then. Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I would definitely come over and give you a microphone. Uh-oh. Boy, nice right now. She's right now this week, then on vacation.
So we're finished.
So,
Who's in 2 days this week?
yeah.
What we call it vacation.
Well, I think he's right. Taking that. A little more. So my dad's a respiratory therapist. I've grown up around.
Sending machines.
Well, they used to be bigger.
All my father's was a big thing following him around. I have no lung issues at all. I just have an autonomic nervous system.
Oh, okay. That's
So-
interesting.
Well, it's a tumor taken out of my head
Oh, my goodness.
20 years ago and it's started taken out again 2 years ago.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's somehow infected the autonomic system. So there's not one part of my body that runs on its own.
Oh, no.
I have like 16 different prescriptions.
Oh, my goodness.
Yes, between 2 brain surgeries, a Parkinson's, and 3 fractures in the back.
Holy Moses. Oh, yeah, because you have the back.
This is because I have to consciously think about taking a deep
Yeah.
breath.
Yeah. Because your brain.
My brain is just not linking
Right.
to do it naturally. And it's not that, I mean, oftentimes when not stressed, not driving, not doing anything, I don't need it, I'm just sitting there
Right.
doing nothing.
Interesting.
But if I
Oh. Now it's a pregnant lady, that was my best.
It's a bitch when you're pregnant, I'm sure.
I had to have my husband tie my shoes at my last pregnancy. I just couldn't do it anymore.
I can believe it.
Yeah.
And my wife has had 3 artificial hips
Oh, my goodness.
in the last 9 weeks
Oh, my God.
on the same hip. So she can't tie her shoes either. right now.
No.
And we had to have the EMTs from Cascade out one night with out of her incision, just spraying blood and fluid.
Well, that's not good.
And that's when she went back in and they found the staph infection that had resulted first. So they took half of it out and I told the doctor, I took it all out and then make sure it's really cleaned up.
Right.
He said, well, she had shattered her pelvis 20 years ago. And so the back of her pelvis is held together by titanium, which nails it to it. Now, the front of it is held together by an artificial hip.
She's a bionic woman.
Yeah, she's a $6 million woman. Yeah. But, so he didn't want to take him out for the #, whatever it is.
Yeah.
We just sort of consider it. And I said, why do you need the plastic covering? I said, from what I read, bacteria adheres to plastic more easily than it adheres to shiny metal.
Sure.
And he said, that is not true in his best godlike voice. And I said, who made you Moses? And then the infection returned. And so now she has a spacer
Okay.
in there, which is a temporary one.
Right. So she's gonna have to go back in.
Or a 4th.
Yeah.
Yes. Now, maybe a year out, it depends on how the spacer works with her. But, so,
She's in bed right now.
no, she's actually doing far better than I am.
Oh, wow.
Because the infection is largely gone and she's only walking with a cane, but we still can't pick up anything. We
No
have
drop
reachers,
anything.
we have reachers all over the
Yeah.
house. It's, this, my back is getting operated on in September.
Again?
So this will be the first time.
Oh, okay. So it's just injured. Okay.
It was injured a year or so ago. When I had this stupid idea to try to lift up and turn over a kayak full of water.
Oh.
Because when I'm in the Gulf Force Winds, I retrieved my lower, the end of my dock.
Yeah.
I got the dock back, but managed to sink the kayak in the process. I said, why not just turn it over? Oh. And then with the Parkinson's, I fallen a few times and fractured 2 other places.
Oh, wow.
So,
So is the Parkinson's, may I ask, from the tumor or is
no,
it just?
my father died from Parkinson's.
Oh, he did. Okay.
So, yes, I suspect some part of it is hereditary.
I would suspect that as well.
My wife says I've had it since the surgery, that first surgery. Because the tremors have been there for a while. And you know how, where the tremors bother you most is, well, besides eating and dinner.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And keeping things on your fork where you're spoon.
Right.
When I was, before I retired,
Uh-huh.
if you go to negotiate with somebody and your handshake,
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
they think they had you already.
Oh, yeah, that's probably not good. Yeah.
So, so negotiation sessions would be
Yeah.
in
And
fact
dinner.
there.
What about sleeping?
Sleeping, I take so many drugs,
Oh, that you can.
and I also use a BiPAP,
Okay.
which has been the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Oh, really? Okay.
It has been a huge improvement over the CPAP.
Okay,
Um,
what's the difference?
The CPAP, the pressure goes in, pressure goes out, the same levels.
Yeah.
The BiPAP, the pressure goes in, mine anyway, about 16 or 17. It's out at 8.
Okay.
So it forces more air deeper in your lungs.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I'm
Um,
sure my dad explained this.
and so that was a huge difference.
Yeah, that is.
Because, and I take I call it my anti-serial killer medication. Because when these tumors are in there, they cause incredible outbursts of anger. And I have thought about throwing associates at the law firm out the window. I'm not done it yet, but I'm retired now. I don't want to be seen associate.
Right.
Doesn't make you think. But I was having just, they're called suicide headaches before this last one was removed.
Yeah.
And so they went in and included the ganglion, the basal ganglion or whatever, the cortisol or cortisone or
Okay.
whatever. And that would help it for about 3 or 4 weeks. And then come back, the headache would come back, but then the surgery occurred. The same day that I heard that I had Parkinson's was the day I heard that I have to have surgery to remove the tumor again. And interestingly enough, well, I mean, it didn't bother me. I could go through one of these surgeries back when the instructions for the surgery were done in stone. tablets. And they had big crayons. And the thing was directly between here and here, and here and here, so directly in the middle of your head. And it was bigger than a golf ball.
Oh, wow.
And it was taking away the vision in my right eye.
Yeah.
Because it hit the optic chiasm as well. And so I got the best surgeon in Northeastern Ohio, which is where we lived at that point. We did these all the time. We did all of them. All came to university hospitals and it was done by this one guy.
Yeah.
And he was great. And he said he got a 1 in 4 chance of it returning. We can radiate it now, but our radiation are not as precise as it could be. You could be doing more brain damage.
Right.
By imprecise radiation. So both agreed, let it ride. And so we did. It was 3 million miles in the air after the first surgery, which in our council family for 7 years.
Yeah.
Took both of their companies public. I mean, I created one of them.
Yeah.
In Hong Kong.
Nice.
And we took one on the New York Stock Exchange. One in Australia, and one in Tokyo. So got all of that. In about 2013, and I taught for a number of years at Michigan State Law School.
Oh, really?
As an adjunct. So it's about like working here for $45 a meeting. But you then end up with, and this is why I have my, I've had my moments with spectrum of late. I haven't had my surgery spectrum, but, had my nerve, had my tumor taken out 3 foot metro.
Right. Oh.
Because the it's doing, there's a new approach developed at Ohio State in the last few years. And the EMT surgeon is the one who lights the path into the neurosurgeon.
Okay.
And so they have to break far fewer bones.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they found, which is probably caused some of the headaches this time to be more severe than last time, people with bigger tumor last time, was a long-term low-grade infection in my caught behind some of the scar tissue from the first surgery. So they took a white took when the ENT guy took down that scar tissue to get back into where the tumor was. He just got this whole lump of skin blowing out. And I didn't have a headache after the surgery. I haven't had one since. So in that sense, the surgery was good to have. But my neurologist at Spectrum, who had sent me, we have what's called a DAT scan, which is a test to find out whether you have Parkinsonism.
Oh.
Because it measures the, whatever, it starts with the D, but the things, dopamine, I guess it is, both sides of your brain.
Okay, yeah.
If they're about level, they're fine, but if they're distinctly different, you've got a problem, and mine are distinctly different. So he called in a prescription for the normal Parkinson's medication, which is Suna, carbidopa, levodopa. And my pharmacist calls up and says, you have a prescription here for carbidopa, levodopa. And I said, does that mean I have Parkinson's? And he said, well, that's the treatment for Parkinson's. I said, I really wish I would have heard that from my doctor. So I didn't hear that from him. He was a Spectrum neurologist. So I called his office up. I got a nurse visit, whatever, to give me the free line. Doctor's answer. Yes, you have certainly Parkinsonism, and it's probably Parkinson's. But you've got medication. We'll come in a couple, you'll come in a couple of months, and we'll see how it improved or not, or whatever. End of story. I said, can I speak to the doctor? Well, he's very busy. I said, well, he's less busy now than he was a minute ago because he has one fewer patient.
Oh.
I only work with doctors who will talk to them.
Right.
And so I went to a Town Center. It's in there.
Oh, I don't know that.
But that's a neurologic. My neuro-ophthalmologist is there because of that.
Right.
Vision, I permanent damage to my optic nerve.
Right.
And my endocrinologist is there. Who will listen to me. She's very nice. And my neurologist is there. On the other side of the coin, on the surgery, on the tumor, my doctor had said, we don't need an MRI evidence here because the last 4 years has been perfectly stable. Hasn't done a thing. I said, well, I don't feel quite as well taken before. I want an MRI every year since the first surgery.
Yeah.
So this MRI reader threw the Spectrum under the bus, but I'm not going to sue them under the bus by saying, not only has it now become big enough that it's impacting your optic chiasm again, and so no longer can anything be done with surgery. But as I look back at the last 40 years of MRI results, it's perfectly clear you can see it growing year to year to year. Not a large amount, but you can see the steady growth.
Right, so it has changed.
So it has changed each of those years. And so.
That's so crazy because doctors nowadays are maybe usually like, no, we want you to have all the tests. My daughter has left living town, we still have to go in and do all kinds of stuff. And she's had a big surgery and now she's doing that job. But yeah, they're always going to do all kinds.
Yeah, and how many surgeries does she have to have in the
Well, they don't give you a number, but she has had.
Yeah, it is.
She's had 4. So that's many of them. She's 50. It's not bad because.
Merlin, you're still here.
I wanted to point a lawyer. I don't know anything.
You know nothing?
I know nothing.
You probably remember.
Oh, yeah, I do. I used to watch it all the time.
What'd you work about? Did you do a case?
What's that? Yeah, I didn't know idea.
Right.
Okay, so we have everybody?
Make the motion, we go back into open session.
Do we need a motion?
To return to open
Return.
session?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cross our Ts and dot our Is.
So that's a motion by trustee Shipley, supported by trustee McDonald to return to open session. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Does it have to be a roll call?
Clerk Slate.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Slater, yes. Trustee McDonald.
Yes.
Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes. Motion carried. Article 12, manager comments.
Wait,
No, no.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion that we make a motion to direct the township attorney and designated staff, which I think is Stephanie, staff to proceed as discussed in closed section and if necessary, execute a purchase agreement.
Support.
It's a motion by trustee McDonald, supported by trustee Shipley, to direct our township attorney to proceed as discussed in closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next up, Article 12, manager comments. Assistant Manager Fast or anyone?
I would just like to say that everyone should get very excited. Mandy from the Kent County Sheriff's Department will be retiring on August 20 and will be starting here at Cascade doing code enforcement for our residents. So she is amazing. She's going to be a great addition to the staff and the residents are going to love her. And we're just so excited to have her on board. I'd like to point out that she was the community policing officer for Plainfield. Plainfield has tried to recruit her, but sadly they were too late.
Good work, Assistant Manager Fast. You get the badge for that. Article 13, board comments.
Mr. Merlin, thank you for staying for the entire meeting. I normally say this to everybody who's here. Thank you, staff, for putting up with my idiosyncrasies. That's all I have to say.
Treasurer Pierce?
Update, we've collected over 10% of the taxes so far for the summer
Wow,
session.
already.
September 14th is the due date? September 14th is the due date?
September 14th. Well, the due date is actually June 1, July 1, July 1. We can pay without penalty up to September 14th.
Gotcha.
And that's when you're getting mine. Type 5.
I'd say the PFAS Advisory Committee, I think, is meeting, I'll double check, but in the next couple of weeks, and everything's on target we're still planning on starting to dig ground in the early spring of next year. And then whole house filters, the 40 residents that are above the legally accepted limit for contamination should be getting any day a letter from the township about what we passed a meeting or two ago, whole house filters in the interim. Depending on that, then we'll see how we can go with the tanks, the Culligan water tanks. So thank you, trustee Nordhook, for all the hard work on that.
Thank you. Through my processes, I do my little things. I've had several things sit on Ben's desk for a few weeks, and I really think a lot of us have seen that Ben's overwhelmed. I think we ought to be looking at getting an assistant in there to help him.
He has an assistant. Deputy.
I think he needs another one.
You mean like kind of administrative?
I think we need some administrative. He's in there licking envelopes, and I don't think that's really what we hired him to do. So I think we need to get somebody in there to give him some assistance. So just want to put it out to the community. This is what I've seen. Maybe somebody can look it up, figure it out.
Comment on that? We have a personnel committee. Why don't they do a audit of the needs of the township office? It's a growing township. Have a official or an experienced a company come in. I'm sure that our legal attorney probably knows some, and say, hey, here's where you need help. And here's how much help you need. We can all go out and hire an assistant to assistant to assistant. That does not make our process any better.
That's a good point. What do you call that? Organizational?
Review, organizational audit, I don't know.
But it seems like, it would seem to make sense that we should first ask that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean-
Yeah, it's his house, by all means.
And his workload and what does he exactly need, et cetera.
Exactly right, Tom. But I've commented to Ben before, you know, each one of us can easily throw an extra brick in the other guy's backpack. And he'll carry that backpack until he crumbles. And I think that Ben's at that point. And I think that, you know, talking to Ben, maybe he would say, yeah, let's do a staffing audit or staffing needs and get the help where we need it.
Let's make
Maybe
sure
it's
everybody's
misplaced.
backpack has the same amount of bricks.
Some people can carry more bricks than others.
Well, let's make sure that, yeah, we don't want any light backpacks.
I'm just saying, I've seen a lot of things bottleneck there that maybe the committee should take a peek at.
I suggest we submit that to the Personal Finance Committee for review.
Yeah.
That'd be a good
Absolutely.
idea.
Great idea.
Just an observation.
And then whatever Ben's recommendation is, and with help from our legal beagles, find somebody to do that.
Just make sure we're efficient.
You know, Stephanie was officially the code enforcer here, and she's got other duties now. And, you know, her hiring Mandy on is probably a good thing.
And I will say, our new clerk Slater, how happy are we with Chrissy? You have been doing a fantastic job. Thank you.
She is amazing
Chrissy rocks.
and embarrassed.
No, she's doing great. Thank you. You were very much needed. The SAT should be on the agenda the next meeting from now.
With all
With special
proper
assessment
sequence.
districts.
I make a motion for adjournment.
Support?
It's a motion for, motion to adjourn by Treasurer Shipley, Supervisor. Trustee Shipley, supported by Trustee McDonald. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried. Have a great night.
I was fired there for a minute.
I know, sorry, but then I fired myself.
Used to.
Mike, can I ask a quick question?
Thanks for coming, Mike.
No problem.
Yes.